Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa. Wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr. Wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadr. Laylatul qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Welcome back to day 24 of the viral spirituality bites. Alhamdulillah. We're on day 24, so that means that tonight is going to be the 25th night of Ramadan, the blessed 25th night of Ramadan, and there's a high chance that this might be Laylatul Qadr. And we've mentioned earlier, and this is a friendly reminder to myself and everyone, that the dua to make in Laylatul Qadr, as per the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, is Allahumma innaka afuwan tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. Very easy. And inshallah, if you make this dua, and the point is that you should make this dua, you shouldn't just recite this dua. The same way with all our duas. Duas are something to be recited, something to be said through your heart, something to be felt. Right? It's a supplication. It's not a recital. It's not just mere lip service, right? It's not just reciting certain hocus pocus words that will do the trick, but rather it is to feel what the Prophet ﷺ felt when he made the dua as well, right? Obviously, if you cannot get there from the beginning, you may not know what the dua means, or you may not be able to attain those desirable feelings in your heart that the Prophet ﷺ had when he expressed those duas. But we should at least know what the goal is. Right? So we were discussing level 2 of fasting as described by Imam Ghazali and summarized by Imam Ibn al-Jawzi in his book. And level 2 was essentially doing everything that was present in level 1, which was the preventing the stomach and the private parts from fulfilling their desire, right? The base fiqhi definition of fasting. In addition to that, it was restraining all the limbs and all the 5 senses from any sort of sin. And we started discussing some of the sin. Another point that I wanted to make was there's a very famous hadith that many ulama quote regarding the 3 parts of Ramadan, that the first 10 days are mercy, rahmah, the second 10 days are maghfirah, forgiveness, and then the third 10 days are emancipation from the hellfire, itqum minan nar. So one may think that what does this mean, right? So Sheikh Zakaria, also known as Sheikh al-Hadith, explains it as applying to 3 different groups of people, which I thought was interesting. Say there are 3 types of people before Ramadan. There are the extremely pious. So as soon as Ramadan starts, they're forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever little sins that they might have done. And mercy starts descending upon them since day 1. So for them, the first 10 days are already a mercy, right? And they're already forgiven by the time the first night of Ramadan starts. And then there's category number 2, which are a mixture of good and bad, right? People that do some good deeds and they also fall into sins. So they, through their worship in the first 10 days of Ramadan, are forgiven by day 11. And so they attain forgiveness by day 11. And then they start benefiting from Ramadan. And then there's the extreme sinners who have essentially chained themselves and tied themselves down to the hellfire through their actions throughout the year. So through their worship of the first 20 days of Ramadan, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees them from the hellfire that they have bound themselves to through their actions. And then they can be free from it in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Now the question comes up as to which category are we in? Are we from the extremely pious in which you start feeling Ramadan as soon as it enters. It's the first day of Ramadan, you feel like you're on cloud nine already? Or does it take us some time, like after the first 10 days, maybe the first 15, 20? And you can kind of use this to gauge how you are doing in terms of your spirituality year to year. You can maybe note down the day in which you felt like, okay, now, Alhamdulillah, I'm feeling Ramadan, and see how long it took. And then hopefully we're not in this extreme sinners category where it takes us to reach like the last 10 days or maybe even the last day. May Allah save us from such a spiritual state to start feeling Ramadan. Okay, so the fasting of the special people, restraining the stomach, private parts, that was also in level 1, right? This is now additional. The tongue, the hands, the feet, the hearing, the vision, and the entire limbs from sins. This is the real lockdown. And I assured you that there was no one hurt in the creation of that picture. And then we went through some admonitions for leading the same life while fasting. If you don't stop sinning, even while you're fasting, then how will your fasting be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need for your fasting if you don't fulfill its mandate. Then we started talking about some of the common sins of the tongue. Number 1 was passing on unconfirmed information without confirming it, right? The sort of forwards that take hold in our societies and on the internet. People just forward things without thinking about it or without even verifying whether it's correct or not. Even rumors, and these are how these things spread, right? Fake news, as one person puts it. So it's in the Quran, right? In ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu, that if a sinner comes to you with some sort of news, then verify its correctness. Okay, and this oftentimes leads to harboring ill thoughts towards certain groups of people or certain people, right? Because we're likely to believe it when it's regarding people that we don't like already. And this happens all the time, between family members, daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, brothers and sisters, so on and so forth. The next one we wanted to talk about was a very dangerous sin, which is ghiba, which is backbiting, right? And this is also in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likens it to eating the flesh of your dead brother. He said, surely you would abhor it, you would hate it. Okay, so this is what it's like according to, in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you're backbiting someone. Now, what is backbiting? This is something that I really wanted to hit home today. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال تدرون ما الغيبة? Do you know what backbiting is? So the Prophet ﷺ is informing us what exactly is backbiting. He's going to define it for us, right? So قالوا الله ورسوله أعلم. This was their adab. They said that Allah and His Messenger know best. قال ذكرك أخاك بما يكره. Allahu Akbar. It's mentioning something about your brother or sister, obviously, in a manner which he or she does not like. Okay? So for example, imagine someone has some kind of fault in them, in their character, in their personality, in the way they look. Right? They may be overweight, or they may be, short, or whatever it is, dark skinned, according to us, right? The desis being dark skinned is like a fault. Na'udhu billah. So mentioning anything about that person that they would not like if they were there, and they would not like that you say that about them, right? If they were there, they would say, man, don't say that about me, right? If they were there to defend themselves, they would defend themselves. But since they're not there, just you're mentioning that fact of that they wouldn't like to be exposed or mentioned, that is backbiting. So now this was a bit surprising, because for many of us this is also surprising. We think, oh, but what I'm saying is exactly true. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not blowing it up. I'm not saying something that's not true at all. قِيلَ أَفَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَانَ فِي أَخِي مَا أَقُولُ. Like, what do you think if I actually find that failing in my brother, which I made a mention of it? And so they also had that same question that, well, I'm only speaking the truth, right? I'm only speaking the truth. So how can that be wrong, right? So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, قال إن كان فيه ما تقول فقد اغتبته وإن لم يكن فيه فقد بهته. If what you say is actually true, right, is actually found in that person, then you have committed backbiting. And if it's not in the person, that's a whole different league of sin. That's slander, right? That's even beyond backbiting. That's just, plain lying, right? That's just slandering the person. When that defect is not even in them to begin with, that's just slander. If what you're saying is true, that's backbiting. Now, the interesting thing about backbiting is that the person that's doing it, the person that's saying it, they are sinful by virtue of doing it, by saying it. And the person that's listening to it, that's sitting there on the receiving end of it, they're also sinful. They're basically an accessory to the sin. If that person wasn't there and wasn't entertaining it, right, then they wouldn't be able to do it. So by you sitting there and listening to backbiting, that is also a sin. Allahu Akbar. Right? So say, okay, if someone starts backbiting in my presence, what should I do? You should defend that brother or sister. Say, well, maybe you shouldn't really say this, right? Or maybe that's not true, or they have some other good qualities. Why are you mentioning the bad qualities? Right? You should start trying to defend that person, and therefore you will be absolved of that sin. Right? You try to defend, we as Muslims try to defend our brothers and sisters when they're not present, right? So this is something that we fall into very, very often. And we don't even realize it. And it's a very, very dangerous sin. Why? Look at what one of the great scholars of hadith mentions. قال سفيان بن عيينة الغيبة أشد عند الله عز وجل من الزنا وشرب شرب الخمر. Sufyan ibn Uyayna says that backbiting is worse than zina, than fornication and consuming alcohol in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many people mention this as a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They say, Al-ghibatu ashaddu min az-zina. However, according to the ulama of hadith, they say that this is more correct to be attributed to Sufyan ibn Uyayna, but it still makes the point. Why? How can backbiting be worse than zina? And this is very surprising. لأن الزنا وشرب الخمر ذنب فيما بينك وبين الله عز وجل. Because, Allahu Akbar. Because zina and consuming alcohol is a sin between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? This doesn't concern anyone else except you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not to do with the huququl ibad. Huququl ibad are the rights of the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have upon each other. Right? This is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. Right? Drinking alcohol, for example, it only harms you really. Right? And obviously if you do something afterwards as a result of being drunk, na'udhu billah, then that would also fall in huququl ibad. فَإِن تُبْتَ عَنْهُ تَابَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ. So if you sit one day on the musalla or anywhere, you feel remorse in your heart and you say, Ya Allah, forgive me for that sin. Astaghfirullah. You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for the zina or for the drinking of alcohol. Allah will forgive you. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafur, He's Rahim. If you truly repent to Him, if you do make true tawbah, of course He'll accept your tawbah. Right? However, وَالْغِيبَةُ لَا يُغْفَرُ لَكَ حَتَّى يَغْفِرَ لَكَ صَاحِبُكَ. Whereas backbiting will not be forgiven until your companion, the one that you backbit basically, forgives you. Now this is tough, right? Because people, it's hard to get their forgiveness for sins. I mean, how are you going to go up to someone and say, brother, please forgive me, I backbit you. It's like, what? You backbit me? Why should I forgive you? Right? No, and when you backbite someone, essentially it's like you're giving your good deeds to them. right? So it's a pretty good deal for the person that's being backbit. So the ulama mentioned that the way out of this, right? Let's say you backbit someone and now you feel remorse over it. The way to get this thing forgiven is to go to that brother or sister and say, in a generic way, right? If you feel like it will not make it worse, right? By saying that you backbit them, then that's okay. You can directly approach them about it. Say, I said something about you I shouldn't have. Please forgive me. And if you have that kind of relationship with them, they'll forgive you. However, if it's not that way, right? You feel like it's going to make matters worse. You should go to them and say, brother or sister, you know, we have rights upon each other. Uh, I forgive all the rights that the people have upon me, and if anyone's done anything wrong, I've forgiven them, and it's good to keep a clean heart. I ask that you do the same for me. Something very generic like that, right? And inshallah, they'll say the same. Okay, yes, of course. It's like, if forgive me if I have not fulfilled your rights in any way. Please forgive me. I'll say, okay, sure. So there's no problem with that, right? And inshallah, you can do that. Hopefully, you can do that before Laylatul Qadr, because there are certain people that are not forgiven even on Laylatul Qadr, and some of those people are those that uh, have harbor malice and hatred towards each other, right? And for them, in their case, it's their matter is basically set forward until the time when they actually forgive each other, or they stop harboring that hatred for each other. And this is the danger of backbiting, right? It's the fact that it becomes something that your friend or your some human has to forgive for you. It's easy to get forgiveness from Allah. It's hard to get forgiveness from people, and everyone knows this, right? So don't even get in there, right? The easy way the ulama mentioned is, when you're talking to someone, don't even bring up a third party unless it's absolutely necessary, right? And the dangerous thing even more is that if you want to harm someone with your hand or with your foot or with your you know striking them or something, they have to be present for you to do that. With backbiting, you can backbite someone 1,000 miles away, 2,000 miles away. It doesn't make any difference. Not only that, you can backbite people wholesale, right? You can backbite entire countries. The people of this country are like this. They're all cheaters. They're all this. They're all that. Now you just backbit a whole country. How are you going to get that forgiven? Subhanallah, right? So in the Quran, in Surah An-Nur, it says, وَتَحْسَبُونَهُ هَيِّنًا وَهُوَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ عَظِيمٌ. Sometimes you say something with your tongue that you think is something small and very insignificant, but according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's something tremendous. It's something huge. May Allah save us from these sort of sins. They're so dangerous. And then some of the common sins of the hands and the eyes. The Muslim is defined as the person from whose hands and tongue the Muslims are safe. Al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimuna min lisanihi wa yadihi. Right? So we shouldn't be harming people with our hands. And that's exceedingly rare nowadays, right? It's hard to hurt people with our hands unless it's like you're hitting someone or your kids or something. May Allah forgive all of us. But the tongue, we need to control that. And then next time, inshallah, we're going to start off with the sins of the eyes. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us this blessed night. May accept all our standing in Taraweeh, accept all our fasting, accept all our du'as. May He purify us, make us from the extremely pious people that are forgiven from day one. And then from there on, they're just gaining extra darajat in Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to keep a clean heart. Please make sure you keep this needy servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your du'as and the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah.